So we just ran the test for the regression equation to see if there was a linear association. We ran the test, the linear regression t-test. We had a 0.008 p-value, so we did reject. We did reject the null. We saw that there was evidence for a linear association. So the next thing we're going to do is judge how big of a slope we're looking at. Okay, we decided that the slope, if we're looking at our equation, is negative 4.486. So yes, there is a decrease for every point of anxiety level. There's going to be a decrease, but now we know it's not exactly 4.486 decrease for every point. We want to give ourselves that, again, a little wiggle room. So we're going to make a confidence interval. So we're going to make a confidence interval for our slope. And I am going to ask that you can do this by hand. I know some calculators have a interval function on them. You can use that to check your answer, but I will expect to see your work. Okay. Now the formula we have is B1 plus minus Tn minus 2 times the standard error for slope. So these are all values that we've talked about before that you have either used to chart or have already calculated. Okay, this is one of the reasons why I tell you to calculate and to jot down all those values for your test on the calculator. So we have a lot of these values. So I told you should write down your test statistic, degrees of freedom, p-value, your standard error for the residual, and our regression equation. Because if you're looking at this equation for the confidence interval, B1 is our slope. So we have our slope, negative 4.486. So that's one piece that we already have. B1, we have it from our equation. The next is our critical value. This n minus 2 is our degrees of freedom. So this is the critical value that we're going to get from the t-distribution using degrees of freedom of 22. So again, running the test gives us our degrees of freedom. Now we're going to use the t-distribution. So if you go to the chart, okay, this is a chart that we looked at before. We have our degrees of freedom on the vertical axis. Going across the bottom here, we have our confidence level. So we're looking at 95% confidence. So here's 95% here. Degrees of freedom was 22. Go down to 22, and you're just going to go across, and you're going to go up and see what value those meet at. So if you go across 22, up from 95%, we're looking at 2.074. So 2.074. So now we have our critical value, we have our slope, and the last piece we need is the standard error for slope. Now the standard error for slope, there's a calculation you have to do. I showed you before in the first video. There are two formulas. I'm going to choose to use the smaller of the two, whereas just the slope divided by our test statistic. So again, these are values we should have down from the work we did before. Our slope is negative 4.486. Our test statistic, is negative 2.893. So if we do that calculation, there is our standard error for slope, 1.551. So there are the three values you need to find your confidence interval. Negative 4.486 is our slope, 2.074 is our critical value, and 1.551 is the standard error for slope. So if you take those three pieces and plug them into the formula, okay, we have our plus minus to get our upper and lower end. Do your calculation, and your statement, your interpretation should be very similar to what we already have been talking about. I'm 95% confident that the average math score will decrease by a value between 1.269 and 7.703 points for each unit increase of anxiety. So again, it has the word that the average, okay, so we're looking at an average here. It's an estimate. We're talking that it's decreasing. Again, since the slope was negative, you shouldn't say decreasing at negative 1.269. The decreasing is taking care of the negative there. And it's important you talk about the units, each unit increase of anxiety. So you're making sure that it's for every one X unit. This is what we are predicting is happening with the Y value, with the Y prediction that we have. Okay? So there's the calculation for the confidence interval and your confidence statement. Okay, I will tell you on the grade assignment, you will be asked to show your work, which basically is showing me you know what these three values are. You're not just using the calculator function. You're putting them into this formula as I have up here right now. and then you're writing out your interpretation. Okay? So that's the mandatory part of Chapter 27 that you will be graded on for the next assignment.